The national education policy, or as it's affectionately called, the NEP, is something that has brought about a dramatic change in education in India. We've been fairly conservative up to now about our educational implementation, but the NEP is looking to make us global citizens, to bring about an education that will allow our children to be able to stand tall wherever they go. Not to say that they don't, they already do. So can you imagine the edge they'll have once the NEP is implemented to its fullest? When you look at the NEP, you find that there have been many changes brought about in education in India through this policy. It is aiming to make education shift from traditional, conservative, rote-oriented teaching, where the teacher just reads from a book, children underline, and they work out their questions and answers, and hey presto, we're done. Now, education is about generating an interest in what you are teaching, so that your children are excited about learning. They want to come to school, they want to learn more, and how do we go about it? Now, as a principal, when I've been interacting with many other of my colleagues, the one common complaint is, how do we implement this? It's so vast. How is it possible? What about, the finances? What do they expect us to do? Surely they aren't expecting us to implement all this. My answer is, why not? If we are educationists worth our souls, if we are schools that consider ourselves progressive, then actually, if you were to look at the NEP, you would find that you're already doing all of it. Because there's nothing here that is new, trust me. It's all about good education and what we know should be implemented in the classroom. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through the NEP. Now, the NEP, as you said, is very huge. I can't go through every detail. But if you were to go to just page 5 of the NEP, they've listed a whole lot of objectives, which is what they want to see happen in schools today. And what I'm going to do today is not go into theory. I like telling stories. I like showing pictures. I'm a visual kind of person because that's what most kids are, aren't they? And we teachers are kids at heart. So I'll be showing you pictures from the school where I was heading it. We were fully compliant with the NEP. When we went through it, we found, hey, we're already doing all this, right? And I'll show you how we're doing it without it being a huge burden on us. Whether it is you're looking at finances or you're looking at the implementation of it within the school, it is highly doable. And I'm going to simplify it for you and show you. The secret is that you have to make it part of your curriculum. Don't try and do everything separately. Not possible. You can't have a separate class for everything, can you? We're already overburdened as it is. So the trick to implementing the NEP is to make it a part of our curriculum so that a curriculum comes alive, and that essentially is what the NEP is demanding of us. So to separate it from academics, separate it from what we do every day would be a cardinal error on our part. So this is the new educational policy as we are implementing it in 23-24, right? And this is all of us know that this is the basic change which is coming about in the structure of academics in the schools, where before pre-primary was not given much attention. It was kind of a haphazard affair where anybody who wanted could do anything. Now they've streamlined it, and where before we began actually from about 6 years old of education, we're now starting from 3 years. So as you can see on the left is the previous academic structure. This would explain it better for you. On the left, you can see we're going from 6 to 16 and then 16 to 18, where the final would be called senior secondary years, right? Now we're moving from 3 plus 2, then we're going to 3 years preparatory, 3 years middle, and 4 years of secondary, senior secondary being combined. Because we all know, if we are CBSE or any other schools, that actually our 11 and 12, the formation is starting in class 9. So now they've kind of made it formal and said, okay, this is how we're going to structure our academics. Now, one of the first things that the NEP demands of us, and I'm going to follow this list, okay, is recognizing, identifying, and fostering the unique capabilities of each student. In other words, saying everybody is unique. For those of us who follow scripture, we know that God says very clearly, I have made you very, very uniquely. And our fingerprints tell us that story, don't they? No one can replace me in this world or in this universe because no one has my set of fingerprints. No one has my particular DNA. So, how do I recognize every child as being a unique child and not just part of a mass of children which is sitting in my classroom in front of me? The way I do it in our school is we begin by at the PTMs, we give our parents this very colorful little, format, and we say, tell us about your child. And we call it in a million words because there's never any limit to what a parent can tell us about their children. They can go on endlessly. So basically, we structured it, tell us how they're doing in their previous classes, what were they interested in, please tick mark that. And then you can see over here the other co-curriculars which may be interested in, and finally, any other. Now, having got this information together, what do we do with it? How do we identify our children so that we know at a glance when we look at our kids and when we look at this list in front of us, yes, I know that Akash is interested in dancing, in singing. He's not that good in academics, but he loves skating. How will I know all this? Simple. You translate this into this kind of a format. So you get your name of your child, you put down how he's doing, where or when. Forgive me if I keep saying he because my school was an all-boys school, so I tend to use the masculine gender. Trust me, there's nothing to do with discrimination over here. So, at a glance, you can see over here, when you are looking at your classes, what is this child interested in? Now, that doesn't mean that this is cast in stone. Children will develop more interest, children will change, children will drop interest, but at least you have a starting point where you can recognize every child with their strengths, with their challenges, areas to be worked on, and any suggestions that parents might have. So, having done this, we recognize, identify, and foster the unique capabilities of each student by having numerous activities in schools. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to be an expensive proposition. Everything you see here, can you see anything that is expensive? The kids are bringing in their own stuff. We only have to give them a platform to be able to present their ability. So, from table A, let's not forget gender sensitization, children learning etiquette and culture and manners, to recycling, to acting, to drawing, you will find that the children will blossom. And what you can do very strategically is link every topic of every competition to what you're doing in class. So it becomes an extension of your curriculum and not just some activity which is happening in isolation, in a vacuum, just so that I can fulfill this NEP, which says I have to recognize every child with unique ability. Now, it's not only that. Unique also comes under the stable children, right? The RPW Act. So here you've got to be able to train your teachers, couple of seminars. Every teacher should, by class 2, every child should have been identified, should have been tested, and should then have a special program in place if they are in any way challenged and need extra help in the classroom. So these are also unique kids, you see, and they also need that special some support, which can be given by the school. All it needs is for our teachers to be able to identify these children early. The earlier we can catch them, the easier it is to be able to help these children to develop in a positive way. So you have your special kids, as they are known, and we're saying, bring them in, bring in special education in a big way into your school. Again, now the NEP says that every teacher has to train in being a special educator. So that is something mandatory we all have to do, apart from having special educators and counselors in schools. We had 5 counselors and 2 special educators, right? But if our teachers are qualified as educators, then it makes it much easier. and they are able to identify and give the children the special attention they need, either modifying the syllabus or modifying the teaching a bit way they are teaching the child, and thus making sure that this child's needs are also met. Now, there's one aspect of these unique children which is very often, ignored in schools. We don't even look in this direction because we're so busy looking at each child is unique. What about my special kids? How do I look at them? But there is 2.5% of your children are gifted and talented kids. Did you know that? Right? Up to 10% in a class can be gifted and talented. What about them? Now, what we did was we simply formed committees. We got the teachers to break up according to their particular interests and their own talents, identify it, study it, come back, and we set up an entire program within which we would be able to not only identify uniqueness, special kids, but also the gifted and talented children. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to provide everything for the gifted and talented children, but where it helps is in being able to handle them correctly, because these kids get bored very fast, right? So you have to know that with this child, I have to be careful, maybe put in some sponge activities. Maybe he's interested in music, so add a little music to my class, which is going to make it interesting for him, right? And in this way, you also have to cater to the gifted and talented kids in your class. Remember this. So what is the role of the school? The role of the school for a gifted child should be to create a learning environment which will identify those children who are exceptionally able early on, recognize the value of the child's ability, and help him or her to realize their fullest potential. Why is it important? I'll tell you. If we don't, these children become discipline issues in our classes because they're bored, they don't want to be part of the mainstream, and so they give us trouble. If you are able to identify them and be able to channelize them, trust me, they'll make the greatest kids and the most positive contributions in your classroom. So it's not only a question of the NEP, it's a question of how do we handle our class as well and effectively, right? So gifted education is special education as well. Now, moving to foundational literacy and numeracy, which is the next one, easy to do, very easy. Everybody, you're supposed to have a maths lab in any case, use your maths labs, okay? Look what we did. We put it on the staircases. Stickers cost you little or nothing to bring up. Stick them over there. The kids are learning subconsciously as they're going up and down the staircases. Where the babies are, we've got, 1 times table, 2 times table, and as they go higher up the classes, we've got those staircases with those tables, right? Now, for numeracy and literacy, what we did is that we brought about 2 minutes reading. Every class, immaterial or what class it is, they began with 2 minutes of reading. So they kind of kept a book, right? And a textbook or a storybook. And we would have one boy who was the timekeeper. He'd take the start, 2 minutes later, stop. Then they would have their little book, which they maintain every day. And over there, they would write down a couple of things. They would just have to write over there, how many words did I read this week? And follow that up with either a face which has a downward smile, which says, I didn't understand much of what I read. Or a face with a straight line which says, okay, I got about 50%. Or a smile which says, do this every class. In 10 days, you will see such a dramatic change in the literacy of your children. Similarly, speaking and writing, interpreting, simple numeracy, and basic numerical skills will help you when you are working with your maths labs and when you're creating things around children, which will generate an interest in them in this. Children learn subconsciously many times. So if you can surround them with this sort of stuff, which doesn't cost much at all. Your art teachers are there. Also done by my art teachers, right? All you have to get is paint. That's it. Paint and brushes. And there you have this beautiful stuff around your school, which is going to generate interest for your children. Now, they're also saying you must have a flexibility so that it increases the learning trajectory of what you are teaching. If you stay with traditional classes only, children are going to be unhappy. But if you involve them in other activities, you will find that just moving from classroom to classroom, using their hands, learning to do different stuff, which involves movement and interest, you will find better learning, improved learning outcomes. You can choose your own subject, and vocational training is a really important part of this, which I'll be coming to more. Okay, so we have over here no hard separations between science and art, right? Children have to understand. So even in 11 and 12, they should be allowed to choose whatever they want. There is no such thing as you're in the science stream, you can only choose X, Y, and Z subjects. We have kids who are doing chemistry, they're doing sociology, they're doing legal studies, right? Why? Because they feel that these subjects are going to help them in what they are looking to become in future. So, dictating to them is not going to help. Yes, timetabling is a nightmare. It's possible. We've done it. I don't say you can give all the subjects, but as far as possible, try to do that because that really helps your kids when it comes to generating interest in them and making learning fun. So you have to learn over there that you have to have multidisciplinary and holistic education, which means skills are really, really important for children today. Now, when I began in school, actually, we had a lot of children who from the economically weaker section, and we felt that their academics were getting affected and they were sometimes struggling. So we said, let's give them skills which will help them later on to be able to shift into different fields apart from just academics once they have to leave school. But then as time went on, it became so interesting that we have now we're actually doing draw blocks for which kids can join the school classes. So it's all the kids now. Why? Because they understand that by learning skills, they're improving their job opportunity. Their personal growth is much more. Fewer dropouts are happening in schools, right? And it enhances some very important skills such as soft skills, team spirit, empathy, assertiveness, inquisitiveness. And this is what? Have you ever been for an interview with one of these multinational companies? They're not interested in your academics. They're interested in your skills. One of the questions they ask is, do you walk your dog? Right? So these are the things that they are looking for. They're looking for lifelong learning abilities being developed in our children now, and it doesn't take much. Companies have the CSR, which you can always tap into. Tap into your alumni. Tap into any kind of parents who are willing to support you. It doesn't take much to set up a skill laboratory. Once you've set it up, it is very easy to run because you will have so many kids. When I started it, I was asked, will it be viable financially? Yes, it is viable financially. And one thing to remember for our kids is that you can take this as your sixth subject, at least in the CBSE, right? In the CBSE, you can take it as your sixth subject. And then if you should fail a subject, you can use this instead. And these are the subjects which you can pick up 80, 90 without a problem. So especially for our EWS children, let's say your child is very weak in math and he fails his math, he was able to move this into his thing. So he did not fail and he got a very high percentage as a result. So you see, it helps the kids also for the future. So coming to vocational education now, telling you a little more about it. Okay, sorry, the electricity is gone, so I'm in the dark, but I hope you're still able to see the PPT. Yes? Okay. So here you have, as you can see, we had agriculture, we had electricals, we had plumbing, and we had food processing, right, which we took under the CBSE. And these were the various classes which you're seeing. Can you see how interested the children are? There's no problems with discipline. There is no problem at all with helping your kids to be able to, be interested and to not create a ruckus because it's hands-on learning. And which child doesn't love that? Activity-oriented teaching is what the NEP is all about. Well, there you go. Vocational training is the answer to that. Right? So what we did was we didn't want to take vocational training from, 8th standard. We started it from the KG. Very, very simple stuff, which would lead into what they would be taking up formally later. So we kind of work backwards. And we created a syllabus that would be possible. And what we did was kids brought in the stuff. The only things we provided was for the EWS children. And how did we run it? We got parent volunteers to come in and teach our children. And it went off beautifully. Our relationships with our parents became so much stronger and happier, right? The kids whose parents were coming in were walking tall that my dad, my mom is here today as an instructor in the school. And it was just such a lovely time that the children were having that it became one of the most popular times during the entire day for the kids. Okay, so here you can see all the different things which are going on. Class-wise, we set up an entire training program, and this is what we move to. Okay, next one, right? Now we're looking at emphasis on conceptual understanding, as well as we're looking
Can you
on.
show the previous slide again?
Yeah, sure. There you go. So, we just moved it. And now can you see in class 9, 8, 9, 10, we're moving into the formal teaching, which would be part of their CBSE syllabus. Okay. So now you have also make sure digitally that you are very strong and that you're able to see what, you're able to make your kids very digitally aware and literate. Now, thank God actually for COVID, because it forced us to become digitally literate, where I especially, very old-fashioned, find digital stuff difficult to understand, but it forced me to learn it. And now I realize this was all something that was in my mind. So make sure that you do and that you use the other information that is available. For example, Diksha is available from the CBSE, and therefore these are learning tools which you can use, which makes your job so much easier as a teacher. There are whole programs over there available which you only have to pick up. There are lesson plans available. Use what's out there. It doesn't have to be such a burden for us. It's a question of just going out and finding what you need. And the net is just full of stuff. You don't have to worry about it. So, our city was preparing for the PISA at that time, which unfortunately we were not able to participate in, but we used digital technology to be able to spread the information to all the children across government and private schools. So it became very interesting for the children, and we wove it into our syllabus. We didn't make it something that was separate. So we just wove it into our syllabus, and as a result, we were training them for PISA while at the same time continuing with our regular syllabus. So it was no big burden on anybody. It was only a question of adapting your teaching and bringing in those skills which the children needed to be able to be successful in this area, right? So here you have now activity-oriented learning, very important. Why? You tell me. Do you prefer sitting down and being lectured to, or do you prefer hands-on doing something and learning for yourself? Me, I'm the latter. You ask me to sit down and you teach me and teach me. I am zoned out within 10 minutes. So here you have kids involved in projects, right? Can you see they've done the project on the planets? We have regular, these book fairs which you can have. They cost you nothing. And the kids are so excited about it. The learning habit, the reading habit is therefore getting better with this. And we also have something called class libraries. Now, they're not tough to have. You all have cupboard space or even a shelf in classrooms. Ask the kids to bring in books. So the kids brought in books. The teachers went through them to make sure they were age appropriate. Then one boy was put in charge who made a list of all the books. And every free period, the children were told, take a book, read. And this child would keep note and make sure that all the books were there. At the end of the year, they were returned to the children. Costs are zero and really helps with the reading habit and with discipline, because during free period, they now had something constructive to do. You see, during non-academic periods. So this was really helpful for our discipline as well. And here you can see we were using land and we were teaching them to grow things. So they were learning about seasons. They were learning about the kinds of fruits and vegetables available during each season. They were learning about weeds. They were learning about manure. They were learning about, gardening essentially. And that is a life skill that is really going to help them, right? So here you have now, as you can see, interdisciplinary planning, very important, and activity-oriented learning. So even in our maths lab, we had a snakes and ladders, which was very exciting for the kids because you could do all sorts of numerical problems using this, right? So you would say, okay, so Shiv, I want you to multiply 6 by 5. And whatever your answer is, move to that number. So now he had to do his multiplication, but he then moved to that number. And if he landed up where, there was a snake, down he came, and he learned a life skill that sometimes, even when you think you're succeeding, you might not be. But don't let it stop you. You're going to try again to reach that number 100 at the top. So you see, life skills being built into learning with a lot of activity and a lot of fun. And here you have animal reproduction. This was one of our worksheets. You have projects going on, even online projects, as you can see on the bottom right, was making things very interesting for our children. Here you see how plants is your topic in EVS. Can you see how every subject has built in, this is interdisciplinary planning, they have built in something to do with plants. So music did it on spring flowers. Art did leaf printing with dried flowers and with leaves and twigs. Value education took up the giving tree, right? English had a role play of a plant describing its importance. GK dealing with herbs and medicines. Math had stories regarding plants, right? Which they did their story sums from. Hindi also picked up pudina, dhania, zira, what do you use in the kitchen? And there you had plants, interdisciplinary planning right across the board. So wherever they went, it was being reinforced without them even realizing that this was happening. Plants was being put into their systems by the time they had finished, right? Even the art integration grid, you can see the dance, the singing, the music, everything was done in such a way that it all included the topics which were being taught in the classroom and were not individual programs on by themselves. So everything tied into education, everything tied into your syllabus, and everything contributed to reinforcing what the children were learning in different ways. We all know children have different learning styles, right? So some child likes kinesthetic, some child likes music, some child likes storytelling, some child likes visual. Well, you're covering it all, aren't you? Somewhere or the other, you're covering it in this interdisciplinary planning, and you're making sure that every child's learning style is being catered to. Then they talked about synergy, okay, across the classes. So here you go. This is what you do. In class 2, okay, you complete the pattern by counting in threes. In class 4, you're learning number patterns. It's a chain of numbers that follow a rule. So you're learning to jump now, okay? And then when you go further up here into class 6, you're learning factors. So you see how from a simple concept, you're moving into factors without the children even realizing what you're doing. And this is really, really helping them with their education, right? Again, make sure that you have many activities in school because school is supposed to be all about helping children to develop their talent. So you should have sports days, you should have music, there are assemblies, there's, again, what you're seeing on the top left is junior sports day, on the bottom left is senior sports day, you're having rallies, and through everything, nothing is not complementing the syllabus which they are learning. It's only a question of sitting down and planning it, and everything suddenly falls into place for your children. Okay? Here, you have ethos, culture, nationalism coming in. So this is what we did. We had proper, assemblies with cultural events where they were learning about relationships, they were learning to build relationships. What you're seeing on the left bottom was that they went to the police and they thanked them for being COVID warriors at that time. They are building relationships with your community, have plenty of outreach programs, okay? So in our school, every class was involved with some program, some NGO, whether it was the mentally challenged, the visually challenged, the physically challenged, the hearing challenged. Okay, we had then the transgender community was involved. They were going to the Mother Teresa home. They were going to thalassemia kids. They were going to visit the old age homes. Every year the program changed and it ran through the year. It wasn't a one-off program. Okay, so value education is a very important part of education if you want your children to develop a proper ethos in your school of compassion, kindness, and understanding. spirituality, vital for kids to be anchored and to know that in times of trouble, God is the one we turn to. So all this helps your kids to become very stable, compassionate, emotive kids who are happy children, doing what they're interested in, and at the same time feeling good about themselves because they're doing what's right. And that sense of being a good citizen doesn't come from just, saying, okay, I'm going to do what I want to do. No, I'm going to do for others. And when you do for others is when you are part of a community and you're building a nation that is strong because its citizens are beautiful people. This is where it comes in. Understanding our culture. Our culture is very different to other cultures around the world. Yes, there are common elements, but there are some parts of our culture which I value tremendously. One part of the culture is being teachers, the guru system, right? The discipline within the classroom and the respect for the teacher. But respect can never be demanded. It has to be commanded. And we as teachers need to understand that if we want that respect to be gurus in the eyes of our children, then we need to be those gurus. We need to make the classroom such a great place that the kids want to come to school. The only question I ever asked my kids was, are you happy? And I asked my staff that same question. Are you happy? If your school is a happy space, learning is happening, trust me. And it's happening with fun. Okay? So nicely, please keep an eye on the time for me and let me know if I'm overshooting my time, okay? So here you have then the sustainable development goals being built into your curriculum, human rights being built into your curriculum. Can you see how we used to plan it? So everywhere we're including Article 30, 15, 7, 14. We're working with the SDGs. We were working with human duties, human rights, but human duties also. We're so quick to demand our rights. What about our duties? So we put a lot of emphasis on duties because that helps to grow good citizens. We told them, first do your duties. And if everybody's doing their duties, the rights are automatically being received by everyone. So these are the kind of kids we need to teach our children. And what is so difficult about it? Tell me. It's just planning. Am I spending money? No. Am I adding to my classwork? No. I'm just building it into my teaching. It's part of what I'm going to talk about when I'm teaching my children, right? Now, entrepreneurial skills. Research, very important in the NEP. We're asking our children, when our kids go abroad, the one thing they come back and say is, ma'am, we don't have research skills. So teach our kids that. The boy on the left, he won an international research competition, made a very interesting little gadget which fixed on specs. And when you sat in front of the screen, this gadget told you whether you were sitting correctly, was the distance right, were you at the wrong angle. And he was the only student who was showcasing his stuff when they had the exhibition because all the rest were university students. And they told him, you don't stand a chance. Well, he got selected, he represented India, he went ahead and he won at the international level. Why? Because he was simply encouraged and supported. That's what the kids need. Support them, give them the help they need. You will find your children blossoming, right? Even on the entrepreneurial front, our kids went ahead and in the USA won the entrepreneurial competition over there. Other life skills being taught. Here you go. They're learning how to make salads. Babies are learning how to tie their shoelaces, right? Can you see this little one with a scarf? Well, he knitted it himself. He was taught in school how to knit, and then they used to knit every time they were free, and he made that scarf himself. Painting, and especially during the fates, we used to have the boys doing the artwork and face painting and hand painting, whatever you have. So much fun. And then again, on the left, you're seeing Param, the vocational skill. So it helps them to find new ways of thinking, problem solving, and recognizing the impact of their actions and the responsibility that they have to pick up. If I need to tie my shoelace, then that means my mom is going to be saved a lot of trouble when she's dressing me in the morning. Now, that's my responsibility to take care of my mom as well, isn't it? Not only her responsibility to get me ready for school. So you see, you're teaching your kids small things, which are helping them to grow into great caring people and wonderful citizens. The 3-language formula, we already have it. What's the big deal? Right? We already have it in our schools. and teaching in the mother tongue. Hello, if you're teaching your children, you're automatically using it to support what you're trying to say. When you have EWS children in your class, there's no way you can teach in pure English in an English medium school. They're not going to follow. So, to help them to understand, you start bringing in the local language, don't you? So, why is there such a big drama about it? It's part of our lifestyle of teaching. We're proper teachers. It's not that I will speak only in English. Hello, he's not going to understand what you're saying. Give the kid a break to help him to understand. And that is what they're asking us to do, right? Other ones, partnering. We were partnering Dadra Nagar Haveli. So we've showcased ours and they showcased theirs. And you can see on the bottom right, our little boys dressed in saris, looking so cute. And they were doing a Dadra Nagar Haveli dance. So, that sense of nationalism comes in, the sense of identity comes in. You're helping people to get over their biases. They're understanding that they're part of something bigger than ourselves. And once we understand that, we really start becoming good citizens. It's not only about what we are and about I, me, my, it's about helping others, right? So do remember to do this. Okay, carrying on. We have here the children, the outreach programs I was telling you about. We had the visually challenged kids coming in for a fair, which we had, and we had them. It was very interesting. We called it Just Fair. The whole idea of justice being held in a faith. But the trick was, we told our kids every single stall has to be something that can be played by any child with any disability. Can you imagine how challenging it was for them to find those kind of games? But they did it. And can you imagine the amount of growth that took place in our children? The amount of empathy they had to use to be able to devise such games? Because we had the mentally challenged, the visually challenged, the audio challenged, all coming in for the fate. Kids from government schools, kids from EWS backgrounds, all coming in, and everything was absolutely free for them. So it was so much fun, these fates, and our children still remember them even when they passed out of school. This is one of the best memories they say they have, because at the end of it, some of them actually started crying and they said, we've never had such a good day in our lives because we're feeling good about ourselves. So this is what education is about, and it doesn't cost a sausage, okay? All right, so now we have here information technology, different subjects, learning to adapt, learning to make your stuff interesting, and bringing in AI, computers, info IT, and making your teaching and your school something bigger than just the traditional subject. So it allows you to adapt instruction, helps in modification and improvement, and it helps your children also. Digital helps your children to give you feedback, which is really, really important, and for you to give them feedback. So our report cards. Now, report cards, very important part of the NEP. How are you going to put down what your children have learned in a way that does not only talk academics? So we went in for the multiple intelligence reports, right? Where everything was put under multiple intelligences so that they could see for themselves how they were doing, not only academically, but also as a group activity, as people who had to relate to others. Were they able to do this or not? And the report cards showcase this, right? Level 1 needs a lot of support to reach the expected level. Level 2, able to perform at the expected level. Level 3, beyond the expected level. So all these help our children to be able to, visual spatial intelligence. The artwork comes under that, right? Physical education, project work done, that comes under that multiple intelligence. So it's very easy to make these report cards. It's not tough. Self-assessment, an important part of any kind of assessment. If you're going to have a 360-degree assessment, your assessment of yourself is equally important. And then you can sort of tally that with the rest of what's there in your report card and see, am I aligning with what I really believe I am? Or am I in a fool's paradise? And you don't have to tell a child that. He'll see it when he looks at what he's written here in the self-assessment and goes to the rest of his report card, right? So, make your school something. Look at all the stuff that was happening in our school. Fistful of rice, interesting. We asked the kids bring in one fistful of either rices or pulse. And we collected and we gave it to a place where they have a langar. And they give this food free every day to the families of patients in the government hospitals. And of course, the kids didn't do one. Now look at the kids, how they saw it through. The captains got together and they said, well, you have different types of rice. So if we bring in different types of rice, it's going to be difficult to cook. So the captains went around telling every class, this is an affordable rice. Everybody bring in this rice. And if you want, bring just a 1 kg, half kg bag because it'll be difficult to store. And that's what they did. Now, we didn't tell them that. But because they become empathetic, compassionate kids who learn to think for themselves, they went beyond just that request from the school. And therefore, we were able to collect one quality of rice. And you were able to give it, and they didn't have any problem cooking it. Similarly with the pulses. So you see, you give your kids space, you give your teachers space, and they will respond in ways that you cannot even imagine, right? Animal adoption, teaching children that you are the guardians of this earth. Therefore, animals, nature is also under your guardianship. So our KGs and ones who can't go out really for outreach programs, they adopt animals in the local zoo. And then their parents, and they go regularly and frequently to check that the animals that they have adopted are being taken care of properly. So you see how you're building a sense of responsibility in the children and a love for animals as well. So it's simple things, and it costs you nothing because the kids bring in everything, right? Here you have teachers now. Fundamental to any good school is your teaching staff. If they are not equipped to be good teachers, and not everyone is born with everything, okay? You have to give them the skills. Have plenty of sessions for your teachers to help them to learn. In the CBSE, 50 hours of capacity building is mandatory. And this really helps our teachers to grow in their own particular fields as well as general teachers. So have lots of activities that also should be fun oriented, okay? Because they are also just like our kids, wanting to learn without being lectured to. So make it fun, have the capacity building, like I said, and have a lot of accountability. If you're making teaching something that has to be done properly, then you also have to build in accountability into your school. So the accountability comes in, as you can see. Can you see in the center one, the weekly lesson planner on the right, to be filled in at the end of the week? And it asks, were you able to complete it? Were you able to do everything that you said you could do? If not, how are you going to do it? So it makes the teachers understand that this is how they have to go about it. And then you have a look at how their children are doing if you look at the right side, because you have percentage of children who improved, percentage of children who dropped. And this is giving a teacher an idea of, am I an effective teacher or not? Right? So teachers' rating scales are over there. Teachers also being rated by the children. So there's an honesty involved over here, and I think a lot of courage involved over here when we ask our kids to rate us. But if we are good, why should we fear the rating? If we are really throwing ourselves into being great teachers. Hubs of learning, something that the CBSE does. They partner up with other schools. And like we were the leaders of our hub, and so we all got together and we would put up different activities. We would go to each other's schools. And trust me, there is no school that you cannot learn from, no matter how good or bad it is. So long as we don't have a superiority complex and we go into life with the attitude that I have to learn something, we will learn, because that is what we're all about. I think we stagnate as human beings. We stop growing when we are unable to learn and to be open to learning, be open to telling our children, I don't know the answer to this, but I promise I'll get back to you, and making sure that the next day we get back with the answer. Trust me, your children will really respect you. You're not pretending to be something you're not, that you don't have. You're not whiffling and waffling over there. You're telling the child, honestly, I don't know. I'll get back to you. And when you get back, the child says, my teacher keeps her word or his word. And that makes a difference. So there you go, the NEP. Very easy to implement in schools, not at all difficult, trust me. Just believe in yourself, enhance your own skills, and make your classes interesting. That's essentially what the NEP is all about. So with that.
NEP guidelines states that teachers undergo continuous professional development sessions regularly. Won't this be an added burden to an already hectic work schedule of a teacher?
Actually, no, because it's really very easy to complete those 50 hours, you know. It's very easy to complete the 50 hours. What you do is that the way we do it is that for the whole staff, we do the training. And when you calculate, it's about 6 hours a day, right? So, you know, to have you, and out of that, 25 hours are within the school and 25 hours are outside the school, right? Now, the 25 hours within the school is easy. You just do, general workshops within your school, which allows your children to pick up a lot of skills and learn different ways of teaching to make it creative, to make it interesting, and to how to identify children, because these are stuff we need to know if we're going to be effective teachers in the 21st century, right? You can't implement the NEP unless you can do things like identify how many disabilities. Do you know how many there are? There are 21 disabilities. Do you know how to identify these disabilities? So it makes so much more sense to have the whole staff learn together where they can, bounce ideas off each other without being scared about asking questions because they're in familiar surroundings. You bring in professionals, they learn these kind of things, and it helps them to be better teachers. So it doesn't take long to just 25 hours. Regarding the other 25 hours, part of it will be teachers going for their subjects outside, which doesn't take very long. Or you again you can host CBSE seminars, right? And in that, the teachers who are going to be, working with the field which you're hosting, they can all attend over there. So it doesn't become difficult to do it. And in fact, at the end of it, we find that our teachers are much more competent, much more confident, and are able, therefore, to implement the NEP in a way that actually makes it genuinely come alive and not just, as they say, letter of the law, or as they say in Hindi, lakir ka fakir. We can't be that. If we want to implement the NEP in its entirety and genuinely make a difference in the lives of our children.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. We have one more question here. What is the role of school librarian in NEP 2020?
It's huge. First of all, look at getting digital libraries going, okay? So that means librarians, getting digitally friendly, learning how to get their libraries up to date so kids can even access it from home. Now, there's a lot of information which children are going to need. Resource material is needed. Librarians are the ones who are going out there and looking for stuff, talking to teachers, asking them, what do you need to help you with your subject? And going and looking for that and bringing it into the library so that teachers have resource materials in the school at their fingertips when they need it. To encourage the learning, the reading habit, okay, that's very important part of NEP. You as librarians, that's your job, to bring about a reading habit in children, making sure that every book over there is interesting, age appropriate. There's so much stuff to be done for librarians. It is never ending. My librarians were on the run all the time. And every week they were bringing out these digital magazines which they were sending out to the kids, telling them these are the latest books in the library. Here's an interesting article that came out, and all digitally done, right? And they had it in a very interactive way. They used to make their PPTs which went out so that the kids started getting really excited about the library.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. Do we have any more questions? Ma'am, there's one more question here. Isn't teaching in mother tongue as proposed by NEP an unnecessary proposition? Moreover, implementation of the policy may require a substantial increase in financial resources, especially in a budget-constrained environment. Shouldn't the policy be amended?
Let me tell you, my school had the lowest fees when it came to private schools. We had a biggest property because the brothers had brought this in the 60s. So it was a huge property. Now we have the lowest fees in the city in private schools, okay? But we still did everything as you can see. So it is not a budget restriction. It's a question of, do you want to do it? Do you and your teachers want to sit down and make it happen or not? It's mainly building it into the syllabus and working it in a way where it's not a budgetary drain on the school, as I said. You might have to set up certain things, but there are ways and means of getting finances for it, as I already mentioned earlier, which is where the way we went about it, and we're able to get our resources in where we needed it. But even there, they weren't huge amounts required, which were untenable. Okay, you can do it. Trust me. All you have to do is believe that you can do it. Bring your staff on board. Let them be at their creative best, and you will make the NEP come alive with very, very little financial implications on you. We did it. It's the
Thank you,
staff who
ma'am.
made it possible.
Yeah, that is another question which has come up. Like, majority of the teachers are resisting such approaches. Like, especially the new policy emphasis on multidisciplinary approach to education, and majority of teachers are resisting such approaches. So how do we make them accept the same?
You know, those 50 hours of capacity building, that's where they come in. Of building a sense of commitment in your teachers, building a sense of professionalism in your teachers, building a sense of vocation, because teaching is not a profession. Teaching is a calling. If we can implement that and bring it alive in our teachers, then they will automatically move into this field. So a lot of it is building your staff and changing mindsets through these seminars, through these workshops, bringing in people who are genuinely caring people and who will interact with your staff and make them see that this is it. But you know, as leaders, as principals also, we have to make sure that we also walk the talk, that we are also compassionate, that we are understanding, that we are thoughtful, and that we also work hard. We have to lead by example. If we can do this, our staff will follow, and it doesn't become impossible. Yes, it takes a little while to coax people. Maybe you need to talk to some of them individually and encourage them. Sometimes, very rarely do you have to nail your flag to the mast and say, this is it, it has to be done, right? Because this is what education is all about. And if you are a teacher worth your salt, then this is what you will be doing, because this is what teaching is. And come to an understanding of it. There are many ways to bring your staff around. We never had a problem with our staff. They went the extra mile without an issue. They were happy staff. As I said, the only question I ever asked my staff was, are you happy?
Thank you, ma'am, for that. Do we have any more questions? You can either post it in the chat box or ask directly.
I know the NEP sounds and looks very difficult, but it isn't. Bit by bit, build it in. You work on one thing at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by it, okay? Don't try and implement everything at the same time. Build it in step by step. Yeah. And it became very interesting, and school became a really happy place for the kids. We had these fun corridors even, and on the fun corridors we painted stuff which the art teachers again did, and other teachers who were good at drawing, they did it. And we had hopscotch, and we had, you know, learning the different signs. Then there was something that involved mobility exercises. So on the way to class only, they have so much fun going to class, because the whole corridor has a lot of fun activities painted on this, and getting them to class is a problem because each one wants to do it. So that becomes fun. Even the corridors are fun places now, not just places where you're going to walk in one line with your hand on your lips and, you know, move in such discipline. That's not education, right? That's taking discipline to an extreme. So long as your class is meandering happily towards its next destination, you're doing fine.